Okay, so our big question for today's lesson is, can I explain how vocabulary impacts sentences? So we're going to be continuing looking at using our inference skills. So what does it mean to infer then? I'd like you to have a little think, because we looked at this last week. Can you write me a sentence explaining what it means to infer? Pause the video now while you write your sentence. So when you infer something, it means that the answer is not in front of you. You have to use the evidence and the clues that you can see in the text, the image, the video, a facial expression to help you to answer that question. So for your first activity for today, I'd like you to read pages 44 to 47 of Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. These can be found on the blog under the heading Monday, then Reading. Whilst reading the pages, I'd like you to make a note of any vocabulary that you don't understand the meaning of. You can then use a dictionary or dictionary.com to clarify the meaning of that vocabulary. The link to dictionary.com can be found on the blog. So please pause the video now while you go and complete your first activity. Once you've completed it, please come back to this video so we can continue with today's learning. So we're now going to move on to look at shades of meaning. So I'm going to read you two sentences. While I read you those two sentences, I'd like you to close your eyes and have a little think about the difference between those two sentences by trying to paint a picture in your head. So your first sentence is the car bumped into the wall. So close your eyes, create a picture in your head, the car bumped into the wall. The car smashed into the wall. So again, close your eyes, create a picture in your head. The car smashed into the wall. So in both of these sentences, the car hit the wall, but which one sounds like it had more of a negative impact on the car? So which accident sounded worse? For me personally, I would say the car smashed into the wall. The use of the verb smashed indicates that more damage has been caused to that vehicle. So although both words mean the same thing, in both sentences the car has hit a wall, the vocabulary that we use can create a different impact on the reader. So we're going to explore this with some adjectives now. So we have Joe was cross, Salma was irate, and Kevin was furious. Now, in all of these sentences, these people are feeling angry, but who do you think is feeling the most annoyed and why? So to me, I would say the fact that Kevin was furious. Okay, so we know that he's angry, but if he's furious, he's really frustrated by what has happened. So here you can see that I've got some shades of meaning. I start with good, but you can see that there's a couple of gaps on my shades of meaning ladder. I'd like you to pause the video now and write down two suitable adjectives to fill those gaps. So we're going to have a look here at some vocabulary that's suggested. Don't worry if you haven't written these exact words, you might have found some different synonyms. So good, then we could have great or super, brilliant, excellent, phenomenal or terrific. So we can see all of those adjectives have the same meaning, but they have a different impact. You might describe your day out at the zoo as great, whereas you might describe the dinner that you had last night at a fancy restaurant as excellent. So you're thinking about the situation, and that determines which of those adjectives you are more likely to use. So we're going to do another one now. So this time you'll see that I've got three missing gaps on my shades of meaning ladder. So I begin with sad and I end with despondent. So which do you think could go in the middle? We could have upset, tearful, miserable, downcast, depressed, melancholy. So all of these adjectives mean to be upset, to be sad, but we can see how the different adjectives create a different meaning for that reader. So we've got a sentence here. Junard was disappointed by his test results. I'd like you to change the adjective disappointed to show that Junard was extremely unhappy with his test results. So pause the video now while you write me your sentence. You could have had Junard was devastated by his test results. He was heartbroken by his test results. Remember, heartbroken would need a hyphen. So we're going to have a look at another sentence together. Lydia was spooked by the haunted house. Change the adjective to show that Lydia was really scared of the haunted house. So pause the video now while you write your sentence. So you could have had Lydia was petrified by the haunted house. You might have had Lydia was terror-stricken by the haunted house. Again, terror-stricken would need a hyphen. So we're now going to look at the impact different vocabulary can have on sentences. We're going to look at a couple of examples together before you complete activity 2 independently today. So we're going to follow 3 steps for this activity. Step 1 is to identify a synonym for the highlighted word. We can see my highlighted word is begged. Step 2 is to rewrite the sentence using your synonym. Step 3 is to discuss the difference between the 2 sentences, and I'd like you to really focus on their impact. You can use thesaurus.com, or if you have a thesaurus at home, to help you to identify synonyms. Remember, a synonym is a different word which has the same meaning. So the first sentence that we're going to look at today is, please dear, my mother begged. You can see that begged is my highlighted word, so that is what I need to identify a synonym for. So please dear, my mother pleaded. So I've found a synonym for begged and I have used pleaded. So I've completed step 2. I'm now moving on to look at step 3 to discuss the difference between those 2 sentences. So an example of what you could say might be, both of these sentences highlight that the mother is desperate for her son to listen to her. Rather than her asking, both of these pieces of vocabulary indicate that she needs him to listen to what she is saying and do as she asks him. So it highlights the importance of the situation. It's not a choice. She's begging, she's pleading, she really needs that to happen. Let's have a look at another one together. So step 1, I need to identify a synonym for the highlighted word. There was a blinding flash, a jaw-rattling boom, and our car exploded. So we can see that my highlighted word in this sentence is blinding. Okay, so there was a bright flash, a jaw-rattling boom, and our car exploded. So for step 2, we can see that I have changed blinding to bright. So for step 3, thinking about the differences between those 2 sentences. In the first sentence, the use of the vocabulary blinding indicates that the light was so bright it could damage your vision if you looked directly into it. The use of the vocabulary bright in the second sentence makes me think that I shouldn't look directly at the flash, but doesn't create the same image as the vocabulary blinding. A bright light does not seem as dangerous as a blinding light. So although both of those words have the same meaning, a blinding flash creates a greater impact of danger and suspense on the reader than a bright flash. So for your second activity for today's lesson, you have 6 sentences from pages 44 to 47 of Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. The vocabulary that I'd like you to find synonyms for is highlighted within that sentence. And like I said earlier, use thesaurus.com or a thesaurus if you have one at home to do this. If you can think of them in your head, then that is brilliant, but you know where those resources are to support you if you need them. The link to thesaurus.com can be found on the blog. You're then going to discuss the difference between the 2 sentences. So remember those 3 steps that we've just looked at in those 2 examples. Your sentences can be found on the blog and they are titled Shades of Meaning Sentences. If you have any questions about anything that I've gone through today, want to share any of your work with me, then my email address can be found on the Year 6 class page.